evening, race fans. Chris here with Jagerbaum's Fantasy Sports to bring you another live DFS NASCAR show. This week we got the Pennzoil 400 at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Just getting things all together here for you. A little bit rushed here this evening. I just finished doing a roast beef supper, so now I am just loading up tabs here while I kind of just wait for everyone to come in. If you're new to Jagerbaum's Fantasy Sports, you like what you see in terms of our cheat sheets, some of our data and things like that, you can grab, you can either get in and get a free trial and get limited amount of stuff in our Discord, or you can grab a NASCAR package or a all sports package. We're currently covering 10 plus sports at the moment with 4 different coaches. So we're here to help you, and you can actually join in by grabbing the link here. I'm going to post it here. Sign up here. All right. Get that posted. How's everyone doing tonight? Did anyone watch the Xfinity show? Bob, how's it going? Nice seeing you. Hope everyone had a successful Xfinity race this afternoon. Justin Allgaier was pretty dominant. A little unhappy myself. I had Austin Hill as an outright on this one. He had a little bit of trouble. Man, hit the pits early, lost a lap. He ended up fighting back, finishing, I believe he was 10th or 11th, maybe a little bit inside that. So things didn't go exactly as planned. Justin Allgaier looked really, really good. Super fast car. He was fast in practice. So that's something we're going to look at and analyze here. I'm going to bring up the sheet here now. And we're going to go over a few things. Again, the preview shows have been really tough for me to get at, so I'm going to be doing a lot of the stuff that I cover in the preview show and looking at it. Liz, good evening. How are you doing? Hope you had a successful Xfinity race. If not, let's tune it in and let's get it up to speed here for no puns intended there. Absolutely did not mean either of those. Been kind of punny around here lately. So let's get ready and dialed in for the Las Vegas race here. Let's start off by looking at some track history. And again, like I have the previous few weeks here and talking Cup Series, we're looking at the next gen. So I have changed the sheet a little bit in terms of looking at this track history, the last 6 races going back to 2022 when the next gen car, then the new setups came in. So in terms of that, we'll go ahead and we'll just look at track history here. So leading the way in terms of looking at average finish over those 6 races since the next gen car, you got Ross Chastain, William Byron, Kyle Larson, Kyle Busch, Tyler Reddick, and Joey Logano at 12.2, Denny Hamlin not far behind at 12.3, Alex Bowman 12.4. So the group just outside of that top 4 is very, very close here. We've got Kyle Larson, who's got multiple wins. William Byron got 1 win. Joey Logano's got a couple of wins. The fall race last year and the fall race in 2022, he won both of those. Christopher Bell, someone we're going to want to pay attention to. The dude's won 3 straight races. And I guess that kind of brings us into some news here to kick things off. He had some issues after practice. I believe they had to. He's going to the rear for sure. He qualified 13th, changed the throttle body after, so he'll be going to the rear. And the other news is John Hunter Nemechek. I liked him in terms of looking at the pre-race. He's only starting 30th, so that's not really as big a deal for him at 5,500, starting 30th, 4,800 on FanDuel. Christopher Bell, though, I did like him a little bit more in terms of, let's go sort by price here again. So it feels like another race. When we're looking at dominators and stuff like that, we're going to want at least 2 drivers in this top tier. It's not going to be too hard when we've got some $5,000 drivers that we do like, John Hunter Nemechek being one of them. I'll discuss kind of why as we move forward here. But Christopher Bell kind of moves down my ranks now. He's 4th in the model, but he's going to be probably closer to a GPP, low-end GPP play, because he will be starting from the rear and fighting his way forward. So he's not going to have a chance to get any dominator points most likely until the end of the race, unless things go really good for him. But I do really like Kyle Larson. Like I said, he's got multiple wins. You got William Byron. He's 1st in my model. He's got 4 straight top 10s. He's got a win here in 2023. And then looking at track type history, you've got Kyle Larson leads the way with 2 wins last year on 1.5-mile tracks. He hasn't been very consistent, as you can tell, with that 12.9 average finish, but the upside is huge. He leads everyone by just over 200 laps led, and he's got 600 total laps led in those 8 races. Everyone else had 9 last year, but in those 8 races, he led 601 laps. So he was He had a lot of upside, wasn't as consistent. I think he has the best chance to overtake Christopher Bell and knock him off the top of that podium. Other guys that stand out in terms of looking at the mile and a half tracks in 2024, Tyler Reddick had a win, 4 top 5s, 5 top 10s, 333 lap sled. Denny Hamlin was very, very consistent. He's the only driver that had 8 top 10s last year. He didn't pick up a win on the mile and a half tracks, but he had a 6.0 average finish and 63.5 FanDuel points per race, 49.8 DraftKings points per race. So he was quite strong there as well. Other guys, Chase Elliott, Alex Bowman, Bubba Wallace, and Christopher Bell were the only 5 drivers who had 8 top 20s in those 9 races last year. So they were very consistent. Going down the board a little bit, you got Ty Gibbs and Brad Keselowski. Each had 3 top 5s each. So they definitely showed some upside, maybe a little bit less last year for Ty Gibbs because he had an average start of 6.4, average finish of 17. So he didn't give you a lot of that place differential. So maybe not someone that we're looking at. Now let's go ahead. We'll look at, I'm going to jump over to, first of all, the track history. And of course, that does not show up here for the moment. So what I am going to do is drag my other sheet over, which I know is correct. And sorry about that. We'll bring this over here and we'll look at some track history and some of the correlation numbers and stuff like that. Now, some of you have been asking what that correlation is. It's just a simple correlation just to see how well correlated the starting position is to the finish. So obviously the higher, the scale goes from -1 to +1. So anything higher you're going to see on your road courses and short flat and short steep tracks most likely are going to be the highest correlation. Definitely the lowest correlation is going to be your Daytona, Talladega, and Atlanta. With that drafting, it's going to make it a little bit easier to pass and get from the front from a rear starting position. So pretty much what I'm using it for is just to kind of determine where we're looking at grabbing our drivers from, especially in the top tier. So for your, and I'm actually going to bring up my track history database, and I was going to copy that over. It's something I've been working on, looking at all kinds of tracks, all kinds of track types, and the correlations. So I'm just going to bring that up here, and we're going to look at that here real quick as well. So I've got every race on here. I got Las Vegas highlighted because that's where we are this week. So this is your average correlations. Again, the higher the correlation means the more likely you're going to see drivers starting closer to the front, finishing up there, and a little bit harder for drivers at the back to get to the front, whether that be tough passing, shorter races, things like that. And then I've also got on here average double-digit place differential. So places where we can see the most place differential. Obviously, when we scroll down, super speedways. The top 3 being Talladega, Daytona, and Atlanta are seeing double-digit drivers, at least 10 or more drivers on average, picking up double-digit place differential. The intermediate tracks fall kind of right in the middle of everything in terms of both correlation and average double-digit place differential. So it's kind of middle of the road. So we're probably looking for a little bit of both. Now, when we dive in and look at the specific track history here, we can see there was 8 drivers that had double digits last race. In the fall of the Las Vegas race, there was 8 the race before that. Only 3 in 2023 in the second race and the first race. And then in 2022, we saw 8 and 9. So 4 of the 6 races in the next gen car, we've seen at least 8 drivers with double digit place differential. And in terms of dominators, I've also added going forward the top 5 lap leaders. So we got Christopher Bell, 155, Kyle Larson, 181, Kyle Larson, 180 or 133, William Byron, 176. So over the last 4 races at Las Vegas, we have seen one driver completely dominate the race. And in a few of those races, we've also seen 2 drivers with 50 or more laps led in there as well. And so we're definitely going to want some dominators. So when I go ahead and I select those dominators for the races, I'm really looking at practice times, and the most correlation stat of those practices would be your 10 lap averages. Now on the sheet over on practice qualifying, we can see the practice 1 rank 5, 10, and 15 lap averages. So someone that really stands out this race, very high in my rankings. He's number 2 in my model, Ross Chastain. He was first in, so he had the fastest lap in practice, and I believe that was his second or third lap. But then what really was impressive that he led the 5, 10, and 15 lap averages. And then when we go look at the lap average tab here and go look at the 20 and 25 lap averages, he sticks at the top all the way through. He's got a very strong car. He's only 8,300. He's going to be number one on my radar. He's also a minus 18 in terms of where he qualified versus what his practice times were. So that's going to give him a little bit of a double dip, I guess you'd say, in terms of he's got high upside in terms of his place differential. And there's a good chance that if he can use that speed and get up front by, let's say, the middle of stage 2, maybe towards the end of stage 2, he's got a chance, if he stays out of trouble, to be a dominator, probably in stage 3 or again in the later stages of stage 2. There's that possibility as well. He's also been very good here. He's 7th, 4th, 5th, 12th, and 2nd, and 3rd. So 5 top 10s, 5 top 7s in those 6 races in the next gen car. And his worst finish is 12th in the spring race of 2023. So very impressive from Ross Chastain. Like I said, he's going to definitely be one of my core drivers this week. So I'm going to go ahead and plug him in as a core driver here. Towards the top, Kyle Larson would probably be number one for me just because he's been very dominant on this track. He looks to be getting better each and every week. He had 2 wins on intermediates last year. He led a bunch of laps. Like I said, even though he wasn't completely consistent on the mile and a half, he showed big time upside in terms of being a dominator. Starting 10th, I don't think it would take him that long, maybe the middle of stage 1, to work his way forward and maybe get towards the front. If there's a couple of cautions, I think that may help him as well to get forward and possibly lead a bunch of laps. Now, looking back at these lap leaders and where they started, we had Christopher Bell from the pole. We had Kyle Larson from 2nd. We had Kyle Larson from 2nd again. And then we had William Byron from 2nd. So there's a bit of a trend here. So that trend would be starting on the front row is your best chance to be one of those big time dominators. Now, Larson's starting 10th. So he's going to be a little bit more of a risk in terms of his dominator points. But I think he's got the car to get up there and probably lead. If he doesn't get in that top dominator spot, he's probably going to lead 50 to 60 laps. And if we go and plug that in on the fantasy matrix, give him, let's just say, 15 laps led here. As you can see, for 6X, if he does lead 60 laps only, we're looking at maybe a 6th place finish, and he's going to be hitting 6X versus he's got a little bit more upside there as well. And he can completely dominate if he gets up there and leads 100. So that's another thing that for those of you that are maybe new, that's the way I use the DK Fantasy Matrix. To do this yourself, you'd have to make your own copy. Up here, file, make a copy, name it whatever you want, and then open up your own sheet. And then you can come into this DK Fantasy Matrix, and it will allow you to plug and play with these numbers and you can kind of see who's going to give you the most upside and if it's worth rostering a guy that maybe isn't going to give you laps led or not. Like you can see Christopher Bell, 53.5. So we pretty much need a runner-up finish from him to even hit that 5X without any laps led whatsoever. So if he doesn't lead any laps, you're going to need a top 2 finish from him to give you that bare minimum value. While Kyle Larson, starting from 10th, Bell's obviously going to the rear, so he's got to come through everyone. So there's probably not a chance he even gets inside that top 10 until probably the stage 2, early parts of stage 2, depending on their strategy, going through those cautions and stuff like that. So there's just too much risk for me with Bell. I would rather go with Larson, who again has been dominant on this track. He showed huge upside. If we're looking for an early dominator, starting from the pole, I don't think it's going to be Michael McDowell. If we go back and look at the cheat sheet and maybe look at some of these practice times and some potential guys, we've got Joey Logano and Michael McDowell on the front row. Logano did not show speed whatsoever in practice. He was right around 20th in speed. So I don't think it's going to necessarily be him unless they make some mega adjustments to stay up there. Michael McDowell, he looks like he's maybe a top 10 car at the end of the day. I don't think he's much better than that. He hasn't been great here. His best finish is 17th since the next gen car, and actually it's been 17th over the last 10 races as well. So let's just say and peg him, I think like 15th, 12th to 15th is probably his upside. Now, unfortunately, that's only going to give you 20 to 14 points, and that's not going to be near enough. So I'm not really interested in him in the pole. So this is maybe one of those races where that trend of the dominator coming from the top 2 spots. So that does help guys like Kyle Larson a little bit. Going a little bit deeper and looking at the guys starting 3rd and 4th, we've got Kyle Busch and Austin Cindric. Look at their practice times. Kyle Busch looked like he's probably an 8th to 10th place car in terms of his speed. Cindric a little bit worse, so I'm not really concerned about those guys in terms of dominators. Yeah, Daniel Suarez was a driver I was looking at. He started in 23rd. He didn't really show anything better than a 15th in terms of speed. But continuing on with some possible dominators here, Alex Bowman could be a sneaky dominator pick. He got faster as the lap. Looking at the lap averages, he was 9th in 5 lap, 4th in 10 lap. He was 2nd in 15 lap, and then if we go look at 20, he was 3rd, and 25 lap he was 2nd. So he's showing a lot of long run speed. So I think Alex Bowman makes sense as maybe a GP. It's obviously risky starting 6th because of that place differential, but he could be an outside guy that's going to give you. And if he was to give you at 8,000, go ahead and plug in, let's just say 50 laps led, 10 fast laps. He would only need at that point barely inside a top 10 to be able to give you 6x. So I definitely like that. I think that's a great GPP play because a lot of people obviously got Bubba Wallace there at 20th. You got Briscoe at 24th, Chastain 19th. You got Ryan Blaney up here, who I also like. I think they fixed his car. They're not going to a backup. So he didn't run a qualifying lap. So he's starting from the back. Gives him elite place differential upside for an elite driver. And he is only 9,300. So he's 7th in pricing on DraftKings. For him to get 6x, we're only needing a 12th place finish from Ryan Blaney. So I really like that. His track history here, and I'm going to highlight him. He's not going to be another core play for me. Like I said, Kyle Larson up there as well. William Byron started 8th. He's number 1 in my model. Like I said, he's been strong here, 4 straight top 10s, including a win in 2023. He had 4 top 5s, 7 top 10s on intermediate tracks last year. Already got a win this season, and he was 3rd in single lap time. He was also 2nd in both 5 and 10 lap averages. So I think he's a guy that could sneak up and possibly lead some laps there for you as well and be one of your dominators. So that's kind of the way I'm looking at dominators. I am actually going outside the top 5 to look for my dominators this week. And like I said, it comes down to I just don't have faith in Joey Logano or Michael McDowell, who did not show much speed that they can stay up front and lead a lot of laps here. Same with 3rd and 4th with Cindric and Kyle Busch. Starting 5th, Eric Jones. I don't think he's going to be, although he did show a lot of speed, he's going to be someone probably looking at maybe like a 5th to 8th place finish would be excellent for him. He's only 6,300 this week. And for him, we need like 37.8. So a 6th place finish is going to give you a 6x return. And back in 8th, 9th place is going to give you that 5x return. I think that is fine for a 6,300 driver. If he was to be able to get up front and lead any laps at all, I think that would be nice upside for him as well. So he's going to be, even though he is starting 5th and a little bit lesser equipment than some of these guys, it just makes sense, the speed that he showed, that if he even finishes 8th place, that's going to give you some nice value with that 6,300. And it's going to allow you to get, say, a Larson and Byron at the top. Tyler Reddick, he's probably going to be a little bit more of a GPP play for me. Starting 14th, he does give us some place differential upside. And he is another driver who was 13th in terms of single lap time rankings, but he was 5th in 5 lap, 4th in 10 lap, and 2nd in 15 lap averages. So he got faster as the run went on. Really like to see that starting 14th. So I think he's got top 5 upside. And at 10-2, top 5 upside for him, you're looking at a 4th place finish is kind of what we need, 4th or 3rd. So that's why I got him as GPP, just because there is a little bit of risk there. He would need some lap sled to really crush in your lineups, and you would need probably Larson and Byron to kind of fail a little bit and only give you that 4 to 5x return. So that's why I kind of think he's a little bit more of a GPP play, a little bit lower in terms of my exposure for this race. Now, Suarez, I kind of answered that a little bit. I don't think he's going to be a dominator at all. Starting 23rd, I think, is fine. He's had some really good runs here, 16th or better in 5 straight. Finished career high 3rd at Vegas in the fall race here last year. But the problem is simply that he just hasn't shown a whole lot of speed. 18th, 17th, 18th, 15th. I just really don't think he's much better than a 15th place car as his upside, maybe 12th to 15th, and that's just not going to get you there at 7,100. A 12th place is only 42. So you know what? It's fairly close. If you think he can get up to 12th, that's going to give you 6x. That's going to be just fine. But if he's outside of 15th, now you're looking at 4 to 5x if you're looking at like 15th to 18th place finish, which is the speed that he's kind of showed here. So for 3 max, Bob asks here, would you use mainly core plays, or would that be when you use GPP drivers? Well, it depends how you want to build lineups. I'm not exactly going to tell you how to build your lineup. It's kind of up to you how much risk you want to put into it. Me personally, if I was building a 3 max, I'd probably combine Kyle Larson, William Byron, and Blaney in 2 of the 3. Those would be my 3 favorites in the 9K and up range. It gives you an elite place differential guy. It gives you William Byron, who I think has a chance to lead a bunch of laps, and Kyle Larson, who I think could also be a lap leader. I think Byron and Larson both got the potential to lead 50 plus. One of them could lead 100 plus. I think that is excellent for both of them. And then Ryan Blaney is going to give you that elite place differential upside, where if he gets a top 10, he's absolutely crushing his price. I would run those 3 in 2 of my lineups. And then maybe your third lineup in the 3 max, you could maybe put together, and instead of a Larson, go a Reddick. Maybe pivot off one of those guys a little bit. Maybe pick your favorite of the Byron Larson and run, take one of them out and put Reddick in. We know Ryan Blaney's probably going to be 40 to 60% owned just because he's starting 36th. He's an elite driver. He's only 9,300. So maybe he's the one we want to pivot off of. Chastain down here as well. I think you could either go maybe one of Larson or Byron. I'm actually going to bring up DraftKings here real quick, and I'm just going to plug in some of these drivers and see where we're left. Because even though we've got Don Hunter Nemechek starting at the rear, I don't think it's going to be too, he didn't show excellent speed, but he hasn't finished worse than 24th in 4 races, 22nd and 9th here last year. I feel that he's going to be like a 20th to 25th place car, somewhere in there, something like that. And at 5,500, we are needing, I'll take 27.5 out of him all day, and that's still outside the top 20. For that 33 points, that 6x return, we're looking at a 20th place finish. I think that is totally in his range, even though he's starting from the rear. So that kind of helps us get to those, let's just say, a stars and scrubs type lineup, which is probably what we should be targeting here for this week. So I'm going to bring my DraftKings over here. We're going to make it a little bit bigger for you, and we're going to dump, and we're going to go Chastain. So that leaves us 7,300. So if you wanted to go 4 elite drivers, it leaves us 5,950. Now, if you were to go throw Nemechek in, that leaves you 6,400. We already talked about Eric Jones. So you could go, there's one right there, a little bit risky, but you're using almost all your salary. You're getting 2 drivers that I think are elite place differential upside guys. And then you're also getting 2 guys that I think are dominators, and then 2 value guys at the bottom. Whether you want to go Nemechek or not, and take that risk with him because he's going to the rear or not. So that's definitely there. But to really answer your question, Bob, it comes down to how much risk you want to take. Me, for 3 max, I'm making sure that 2 of my lineups probably going to have a core 4, which again, I like Blaney, Chastain. And if you don't want to go all the way down and do superstars and scrubs, you could take, like, let's just say Kyle Larson, for instance, or Byron, one of the 2, and it leaves you 7,300. You then could come down and get Eric Jones here at 6,300. Then you can go and fill in with 2 guys in this mid range. We talked about Daniel Suarez a little bit. Chris Buescher starting 11th, maybe. Bubba Wallace 20th. Talked about Alex Bowman as maybe an outside chance at some dominator points, maybe a little bit lower owned, so you could fit him in there as well. But if you're going with a 3 driver core, I definitely like going those 3 drivers in 2 of those 3 lineups, like I said, and then maybe in that third one going a little bit more contrarian, taking out whoever you think is going to be the highest owned, possibly Ryan Blaney. So if he gets in a wreck and maybe finishes outside of 25th, or towards the back or something like that, and he is like 40 to 60% owned, like we discussed, then you're probably looking at getting way ahead in a lineup like that. But for me, that's kind of where I'm at in terms of the DraftKings. Now, looking at some drivers for some betting purposes here, Chastain is plus 1,000. I think I really like that in there. Alex Bowman, maybe an outside chance at plus 1,200 if you're looking for some bigger numbers here. Obviously, Kyle Larson plus 350 is clearly the favorite here after qualifying. Byron at plus 600 has a little bit of value, I think. Bell kind of lost his value, I think, going to the rear, but it's probably only going to take him, like I said, into the second stage, and he's probably going to be back inside that top 10, whether or not he can get up there. Now, the other problem with Bell that I had him as a GPP play before that news even came out was he just wasn't showing a lot of long run speed. Eighth in 1 lap, and then 5 in 5 lap, ninth in 10 lap averages, and then fell off going into the 15, 20 and 25 lap averages there as well. So not really looking at going him, but the guys that I would probably plug in, I do like William Byron here, Ross Chastain, Alex Bowman. That's a pretty good card right there, just going with those three drivers. Now, they haven't announced the top 3 or top 5, top 10 odds out yet, but going with a whatever betting site you're on, if you can do like a parlay, maybe jumping in and grabbing top 5s or top 10s and mixing 3 or 4 of those drivers in, you can definitely get some good numbers there in terms of that as well. But those would be 3 guys that I'm really looking at right now in terms of betting. Other guys that really stand out for me, kind of in this tier that we haven't really discussed yet, Carson Hochevar, starting 25th at 7K makes a lot of sense. He was 12th in the 1 lap speed, fifth, and he got faster as the long runs went on, 15th, 10th, 6th. It's always risk with him, but he does have a 23 and 15th here last year. He crashed out in 2023 in his first race at Las Vegas. So I definitely like him. Talked about Daniel Suarez a little bit. Chris Buescher starting 11th, maybe, but Brad Keselowski, Ty Gibbs above him have some nice place differential value now in terms of speed and practice. Neither of them really showed speed, so they're more GPP. I'm not really that interested in them. Buescher didn't really show much better than 10th, so I'm not really that interested in him. Going down and look at some of these other guys down here. Noah Gragson, looks like he's about a 15th place car, maybe better. He has the upside of being a little bit better, maybe into that 10th to 15th kind of range for him. And if we jump over and look at that for him, 10th to 15th puts him, well, that would be easily 6x at 10th. 15th gives you that 5x return. So I'm completely fine with that. I think he makes a nice value play. Maybe not as risky as Hochevar in terms of overall finishes, because as you see here in the 9 races in the mile-and-a-half tracks last year, Gragson was actually quite consistent with 7 top 20s in the 9 races. So there's some consistency there that I think we can rely on. That turned out, as you can see here, was a little bit better in terms of the FanDuel, because finish position is a little bit more important than the Dominator points or place differential points, which place differential is only a half a point versus a full point on DraftKings. So if he's not picking up place differential, and you're looking more finish position, he's a driver to look at on FanDuel, and he's also $1,000 cheaper than Hochevar on FanDuel as well. So he makes sense on both sides, but I like him a little bit more on FanDuel here this week. AJ Allmendinger only had 1 race on the mile-and-a-half tracks last year, but he did have a top 10. He started near the back, finished 8th, so that's why his numbers are a little bit inflated in terms of DraftKings and FanDuel averages. He started 18th this week, so I don't think he's going to see quite that upside. He didn't really show much better speed than that anyway. Talked about Eric Jones. Justin Haley's another one. He started 33rd. He's going to be a value play on my radar. He looks like he's about a 12th to 15th place car as well. He was 13th, 12th, and 12th in 5, 10, and 15 lap averages. Gibbs has been struggling big time this year. I 100% agree. If we go look at just form here and we pull out Ty Gibbs, it's actually been quite ugly for him. Even going back into last year, I believe I've seen a graphic. He's only got 1 top 20 in the 4 races so far: 25th, 34th, 32nd, and that 1 top 20 was 16th at Daytona. So Atlanta, which is like a hybrid mile-and-a-half slash super speedway, 32nd. We had the road course, 34th. And he's not even really backing it up a whole bunch with his average run. Maybe a little bit here is it like a minus 14 in terms of the difference of his average run versus his average finish. Didn't really show much last week at Phoenix. Average of 23rd. He finished 25th. So maybe that's someone we want to avoid. He's probably going to be really low owned because of that. If you want to maybe be really contrarian, you're doing 20 max, getting up into that 150 max range. He's a guy maybe you want to mix in to be a little bit contrarian. And in that price range, he's going to get you off of some Ross Chastain, Alex Bowman. I don't think Bowman's going to be chalk, but the Ross Chastain chalk maybe the Brad Keselowski, but again, neither of them really showed speed in practice. Like neither of them showed top 20 speed. So very, very risky with both of those drivers in that range. I would much rather go up and go Bowman Chastain. Bubba Wallace is someone I think I'm going to be a core play. I'm going to mark him as a core play for now. He's top 5 in terms of the 1 lap speed and third, and fifth in 5, 10, and 15 lap averages. And we're in 25s here, so he did not run a 25, but I know he ran a 20. Maybe he did not here. No, he only ran up to a 15, so he didn't run anything over a 50. He didn't get up to a 20 lap run in practice, but he showed some good speed, so I'll take him. Him and Chastain started 19th and 20th. I think they're the chalk in this range here. And then so I've got 4 value plays under 7K, 1 under 6K. There's not really anyone else down here. Maybe Riley Herbst looks like he's maybe a 25th place car starting 34th. And if we look at that, we're looking at 27 to 32 points. And that puts us in the range of a 24th to 22nd, 22nd to 24th place finish. That's definitely doable for him. So I think you could definitely mix him as well. There's always going to be risk with guys under 6K. Nemechek also starting at the back. He's shown a little bit more in terms of the track history. Riley Herbst, this will be his first time in the Cup car at Vegas. So they both have a little bit of risk here. I'm probably never, even if I was doing up to 20 max, I'm not going to put both of these drivers together in a lineup because of that risk. I'm kind of going to go maybe 50% exposure overall, and I'm going to split that between the two of them. So I'm probably going to have, 5 of Nemechek, 5 of Riley Herbst, maybe even to the 6 and 6 range, something like that. But I'm not going to put them together just because of that risk. I usually don't like doing that. These sub 6K drivers, putting them together just adds a lot of risk to your lineup. So it doesn't matter if one of them goes down or both of them goes down. It doesn't matter if you get 1, 2, 3, 4, and you get all the dominators. It ain't going to work out for you. So in closing here, going to wrap things up shortly. If you got any more questions, fire them off. If not, if I don't answer any questions, you think of something after, hit me up on Twitter at Jaeger_bombs9. You can hit us up in the Discord. And again, you can jump in and grab a free trial if you'd like, and you can talk to our coaches in Discord if you've got some questions, or you can grab a NASCAR or an all sports package, and you will get into our NASCAR news channel. You'll get into our NASCAR chat channel where all of our coaches are. That's where we share our core plays. That's where we share our skeleton lineups for DraftKings, FanDuel, prize picks, our top bets, everything leading up to the race, all the upcoming news going into tomorrow morning. Like I said, the podium finishes, the top 5s, the top 10s, those numbers will be released by DraftKings Sportsbook probably later tonight or in the morning. So I'll be discussing that a little bit and how I'm going to fill out my bet card there with those guys. So overall, I think the lineup strategy for me this week is going to be to fit at least 3 drivers from the 9K and up range. Like I showed you before, dipping down into that Ross Chastain at 8,300. I think we can get 4, like with Chastain, Blaney, Byron, and Larson. You can most definitely do that, like I showed you. You just got to come down here and grab either Nemechek or Herbst, and then that gives you a chance to get up to Haley or Eric Jones. So there's going to be some risk there because you've got some high variance drivers, if you will, in lesser equipment, but their upside is most definitely there. And a stars and scrubs lineup is going to be what you want because we're going to want 1 or 2 dominators here. You're going to want to nail that driver that gets 100 plus, which we've seen in 4 straight here at Las Vegas. And if we see 2 or more drivers lead 50 or more laps, you're going to need both of them in your lineup, given that they're both going to finish top 10 or top 5. Because a guy that leads 50 laps and eventually crashes out or finishes maybe outside the top 15, top 20, depending on price, is not going to give you the value that you need to be in the winning lineup or even just like a cash-in lineup on DraftKings or FanDuel. So I got a question from Randall Jr. Single entry core plays type, same as what you said. Yeah, like for single entry, I'm just going with my most confident plays, which again, love Ross Chastain here. Maybe pairing him with William Byron and Kyle Larson and seeing where that goes. So we got Larson, Byron, Chastain. Now, single entry, I don't mind maybe getting away from Blaney, who I think is probably going to be the highest owned driver this week. I could be wrong, but I really do think he's going to be really high owned. So I don't mind fading him in a single entry. You can fit him in too. It's really up to you. I just I always like fading that guy that's going to be owned by half the field and maybe playing it a little bit different. But that's completely up to you. Now that three driver core in single entry leaves you 7,000, so that gives you an option. I mean, you could go Justin Haley with that place differential, and then maybe even one of these guys down here, and then that's going to bring you back up into that 9,200 range. You got Chase Elliott. I talked about Alex Bowman, Bubba Wallace. So I mean that could be a nice single entry. Now you're leaving 1,400 on the table. I don't normally like leaving that much money on a mile and a half track or anywhere where there's a dominator. The only place I really like leaving anything more than 500 on the table would be a like Daytona, Talladega, Atlanta at the most. That would be really the only place, unless you're playing like 150 max with 150 lineups. Then I don't mind maybe taking 10% of your lineups and leaving a bunch of money on the table and building that way, just in case chaos happens. But other than that, no. At least Legge, I don't even know how to spell or pronounce her last name, but isn't driving this week. That was horrible. Yeah, she didn't look like she really belonged out there. She kind of took a couple of drivers out, not really up to speed. So, I mean, it was good to see her out there, but I just don't personally don't feel that they should be giving a chance to these drivers that haven't even been in the Cup car before. So, um, yeah, that's kind of my feelings on that. Yeah, no problem, Randall. Thanks for tuning in. I really do appreciate it. So, yeah, that's going to wrap things up. Again, at Jaeger_bombs9, you can hit me up in Discord. You can leave a comment or a question on the comments below in the YouTube video, and you can always find the link to sign up for our Patreon in the description below, as well as I posted a link in the chat here as well. Thank you all for tuning in. Really appreciate it. And let's go crush Las Vegas.